Hello, my noble band of outlaws. Outlaw Samurai coming at you live with a video. Well, today I thought I'd talk about Shadiversity's video on super speed. More specifically, what kind of weapon would be best used with super speed. And I feel Shad did a very good job of explaining it, but I feel like I want to give my own personal take on uh, super speed and what weapon would be best for using super speed. Now, there are a few provisions that come along with the use of super speed. Mainly, I'm going to be talking about the added abilities that, along with super speed, usually you have super reflexes. And the super reflexes can actually help you quite a bit in battle. Because the faster you can react to something, the faster you can counter attack. And I'm not planning to make this a very long video, but I want to give my personal opinions. I feel like Shad, he really didn't give. I feel like I don't want to say he didn't talk about swords in earnest. He gave the swords justice. I'm not going to put him down, but I feel like he undervaluated the swords just a little. And I'm going to start out with swords, because Outlaw Samurai, gotta start out with swords. Now, my super speed this super speed video, it's not really, I don't want to say a direct copy to Shadiversity's, but I feel like swords are very good weapons for people with super speed. And for simplicity's sake, this person who has the super speed, he's not Flash level. Okay. We're going to say this person. And Shadiversity used 2 times faster than a normal human and 10 times and like 100 times faster than a normal human. I'm going to do a good mediation of 10 times faster than a normal human. Now, with that in mind, I feel swords would be very useful against somebody with superhuman speed, because with superhuman speed, there are certain advantages you gain. You gain enhanced reflexes, and you gain enhanced awareness to even the point where you could actually block bullets. If you had super speed, naturally your reflexes and response time would increase, and you can just sit there going ping, 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 deflecting the bullets. Do what Deadpool does. No, don't do what Deadpool does, because he got shot. But in any case, with that in mind, I feel swords overall as a weapon would be very useful to someone with super speed. Now, I'm not saying the bow staff, because that was what Shad decided was best in his scenario. I'm not saying the quarter staff or the bow staff isn't good, but swords made out of modern materials are much stronger than their historical counterparts. And with that in mind, this is going to be someone in a modern world who's 10 times faster than a normal human, using a sword with modern materials. Now, for ease of use, it's going to be spring steel. And anyone who knows swords, I'm just going to make this 5160 spring steel. A very, very, very good steel for making swords. It's counted as one of the best. It's extremely tough, durable, resistant to bending. It springs, so it's flexible, and it holds one hell of an edge. And with that in mind, the video Shad did was good, but I feel like he didn't really go in depth enough with the swords, because again, he said, if you're dealing with an opponent in cloth armor, that's good. Nowadays, if you have someone with super speed, they're not really going to be dealing with anyone who has armor stronger than Kevlar, and a sword can actually cut through Kevlar, unless it has like steel fiber woven into it. But normal Kevlar fabric, swords can actually cut through. It dulls them relatively easily, but it does. But swords can cut through Kevlar vests, and they can even pierce through them. And with that in mind, this person who has this modern 5160 sword, uh, for all intensive purposes, is going to be a single-edged curved sword. Similar to what Shad said, but I'm just going to say out straight, it's going to be a katana. Now, the katana is mainly a slashing and hacking, like a slicing, chopping, and slashing weapon. Because of the curvature of the blade, as you can see, this sword is substantially curved. I'm holding the hilt directly at the camera lens, and the point is over here. So, with that in mind, I feel like someone with super speed will gain a very high advantage from using a sword. And I'm actually going to put you up on a higher filming position so I can actually talk whilst I show you what I mean. And yes, I still have my Sports Illustrated model up on my wall. It's right above my bed, so what are you going to do? So, with swords in general, I feel like Shad gave the topic of using a sword justice. Don't get me wrong. He is also a sword lover, and he knows what he's talking about. But I feel like in the modern world, you're not going to run into someone wearing plate armor, so we can immediately throw that out of the way right now. He's not wearing plate armor. Okay, so what advantages would you get from using a sword with super speed? Well, for one, physics. Because in order for a sword to cut, it relies on two things: mass and inertia. The mass of the weapon plus how fast you swing the weapon will depend on how it cuts. So the faster you swing the sword, the more cutting force you're going to have, because all that force that you're going to be cutting with is going to be on a very small surface area, about the width of a fingernail. So as you can see, the edge on this sword, I don't know how well you can see the edge, but the edge is a very fine edge. I might actually need to go back and sharpen this. But in any case, it's utilitarian. It'll cut bottles. It's fine. When this thing stops cutting bottles, then I'll sharpen it again. But in any case, with that in mind, the sword itself, I feel like you'd get a lot of advantage out of it, because swords, historically, especially the katana, is a nimble sword. It's not as big as a longsword. Now, that's probably going to spark the debate of longsword versus katana. I'm biased towards the katana, but I feel if the longsword was properly crafted, it could give the katana a run for its money. But in any case, with the katana, I feel someone that can move 10 times faster than a normal human would get a massive advantage out of this. And what I mean by that is, if you can, like Shadiversity said, if you can move twice as fast as a normal human, then you're already going to put a lot of power into your sword. For example, if a normal human at full power performs a cut like this, and it's full powered with both their arms, if you're 2 times faster than a normal human, that would be the equivalent of you swinging the sword one-handed. Now, if you are, like, as I said, this is 10 times faster than a normal human, and when we get 10 times faster than a human, you'd probably be able to run at speeds damn well close to a cheetah. So you'd easily be able to break the 50-mile-an-hour limit. So, and that's not really, you don't really have to be super fast. You don't have to be Flash level to be deadly. Just moving 10 times faster than a normal human will put you at a very deadly efficiency. Because as soon as you cut through one opponent and another opponent lines up, with your enhanced reflexes, you'll be able to cut through the other opponent. And then cut through the next opponent, and then cut through the next opponent. It's the enhanced reflexes that you gain from super speed that allow you to perform these cuts. Now, granted, the human body ain't built like that. This is fantasy, but the human fist, for example, as Shadiversity said, our bodies are designed to be able to punch something and our bones and our muscles absorb the shock. Same with a sword. Now, inertia is a double-edged sword in this case, where for every force you put into something, there's an opposite and equal recurring force. For example, say I was going to cut my arm off. Now, my blade is putting down the full force, but my arm is offering a resisting force that makes the blade, that I'd have to push the blade in harder in order to get the cut. To cut something, you have to put in more force than the resisting force of the thing you're going to cut. And with super speed, you can put in a lot of inertia, which adding even the mass of this sword here. This sword is roughly, I'd say, in the ballpark of about maybe 3 pounds, not 4 pounds, like anywhere between 2 and 3 pounds. All right. So with that in mind, even me swinging this sword like this makes it heavier when it hits. It's like just me tapping like this. Me tapping like this. You hear the difference. A soft tap and then a loud tap. That's because I put more inertia into the blade, ergo more force, ergo more cutting power. Now, with that in mind, this human can move 10 times faster than a normal human. And if a normal human can run at a top speed of 15 miles an hour, that'd be 15 times 10. So that would be 0, 0. You'd be running at around, I think, 150 miles an hour. So you'd be just 50 shy of NASCAR, baby. And just imagine how much force you'd be able to swing with that. Not to mention with your super speed. You'd be able to move your arms. You'd be able to move your arms 10 times faster than a normal human. So with that in mind, you'd also be able to get your sword moving 10 times faster. And with that in mind, you'd be able to cut and slash more effectively. And you'd even be able to completely blow past somebody running at 150 miles an hour. And if you have a curved sword, especially with a curved sword, you can just basically pull the sword through, and because of the curvature of the blade, the edge is going to dig in more than if it was a straight sword. Now, generally, you can't slash, you can't eviscerate with a straight sword. It's just a lot harder. And I feel like this katana actually has the curvature actually has a curvature that would increase its cutting ratio. Like, this katana here has a substantial sortie, or curvature to the blade. But with that in mind, yes, I do believe that if you, as with your super speed, use a sword, you're going to see more benefits than if you were to use a quarterstaff. Because your sword is going to be made out of modern materials. You're not going to meet any knights in armor, and if they are wearing any form of armor, it's going to be Kevlar, but your sword will be able to cut through the Kevlar. So, with all this in mind, if you have super speed, if you can move 10 times faster than a regular human, go away. If you can move 10 times faster than a normal human, then you'd be able to do 10 times more damage than a normal human. And swords, even with minimal force, can do damage. You don't even have to, with a properly made sword and it has a good edge on it, good geometry, you don't even have to full swing, you don't even have to full power swing to cut a human arm off. Just imagine it. 10 guys standing in a row, with your super speed, you'll be able to cut all of them down in one swing relatively easily. So, if you're using a sword made of modern materials, which is stronger than their historical counterparts, you have the 10 times speed boost, and you utilize your newly enhanced reflexes and abilities, and you are able to use the sword effectively, and you also have the skill to use it, yeah, you would be extremely deadly. And I feel like that's something Shadiversity didn't really cover. The enhanced reflexes that you would gain from the super speed that you would have. Because I like to use anvils as examples. Uh, if a, but as I said before, usually I use anvils for examples of strength. But with speed, 15 miles an hour is upper lower class Olympian, I think, in terms of human mobility. But in any case, with that in mind, a person running at 15 miles an hour will substantially beat lesser fit humans. Now, ramp that person's speed up by 10, and you'd have someone running at 150 miles an hour. That's just 50 miles an hour short from NASCAR, again. And every time you increase their speed, you also increase their reflexes. Because the faster you are, the faster information gets to your brain, and then the brain sends electrical pulses to your muscles, the quicker your reflexes are. So if you are 10 times faster, that means everything in your body is 10 times faster, including your reflexes. So let's say you did something, and it takes me about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 seconds to react. Now, for this example, I'm going to cut the speed in half. I'm 5 times faster than a normal human now. So you do something, I react instantaneously. Now, if I was 10 times faster, I'd react before you even had a chance to do it. So, I feel like swords, if you know how to use them, if they're made of modern materials, and
can you find somebody that can talk more?
Not. Will you be quiet?
Will you be quiet?
Sorry, my grandmother is being an imbecile. But in any case, with that in mind, as I said, if you are 10 times, if you have a sword made of modern materials, and you know how to use it, and you know that your opponent is not going to be wearing full plate metal armor, most likely a very thick jacket, or I don't want to say gambeson, but a very thick police jacket or Kevlar vest. And with that in mind, yes, your blade will be able to slash it. And even if you don't use a katana, for example, say you used a rapier, and I'm going to use one of my old broken training swords as an example because it's very rapier-like. With your super speed, sometimes thrusts are all you really need to kill somebody. You don't always have to cut somebody in half in order to finish them off. A simple, well-placed thrust will do the same thing. So someone who's using a human with 10 times normal speed, and he's using a rapier, and all that weight is the weight of a rapier is majorly in the hilt. And with that in mind, you have very good tip control. You could thrust into one body, thrust into another, and then thrust into another. And you would actually probably be hitting them with the force of a 22 caliber, if not a 9 millimeter, with the thrust from a rapier. Now, granted, I'm always I'm the type of guy who likes to do devastating cut damage rather than thrusting damage. I like my swords to be both cut and thrust oriented. But with that in mind, I do believe that swords, for someone with super speed, would be a highly valuable weapon. And I keep reiterating this. If you have the sword made out of modern materials, like 5160 spring steel, it will be very tough, very resilient, and hold a very good edge. If you know how to use a sword, and you utilize your speed and reflexes to your example, you would be very, very devastating in combat. You'd be that guy who could cut down 50 men in a blink. Well, not so much blink, that's more flash speed. Like, you'd be that guy that could cut down like 50 men in like 10 seconds. But in any case, I said weapons in this video, weapons. And you're probably thinking, well, what other weapon would I suggest for somebody with super speed? Now, you're probably going to think I'm crazy, but bow and arrow. And you're probably thinking, why would he choose bow and arrow? It's not like this guy has super sight. And you're right about that. You're right about that. Uh, the guy we're talking about doesn't have super sight, but he does have super speed, which can culminate into super sight. Because when your eyes see something, they send information to your brain. If since your body is 10 times faster than a normal human, your eyes would send information to the brain 10 times faster. And what that means is, say you have three guys charging at you. You could just pull one arrow out, load, fire. Pull another arrow out, load, fire. Pull another arrow out, load, fire. This is also taking advantage of your reflexes again. Because you have enhanced reflexes, you'd be able to go bam, 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 bam. Well, probably not that. That's Hawkeye shit. But in any case, with that in mind, if you take advantage of the enhanced reflexes that you have, a bow and arrow will be very useful, especially if you don't want to get too close, because that way you can take them out from far away. And with that in mind, you'd also be able to not only draw the arrow from the scabbard, not scabbard, it's not a sword, the quiver. Pull the arrow from the quiver, get it onto the bow, knock the arrow, draw, and fire. But you'd be able to do it at a much faster speed. It usually takes about I want to say 5 seconds for an intermediate archer to take an arrow from his quiver on his back, put it on the bow, put it on the arrow, knock it, turn his hand around, draw, aim, and fire. That usually takes all around 10 seconds for the entire process. Keeping in mind that you now have the enhanced abilities of a man who is 10 times faster than a normal human, you'd be able to do that in relatively 1 second, where it is literally a blur, where it's just like you didn't even have time to blink before that arrow is flying at you at 300 feet per second. So yes, I would say that bows are very, very good for someone with super speed. But there's another question. what if, this hypothetical question, what if a bow is just not enough? It's not going to cut it because you run out of arrows. Well, here's where I think this would come in handy. And this was very much historically the case, especially with English longbowmen. They would have a sword and a bow, where you would have the sword on your hip and you would carry the bow, and you would rain death down on your enemies with the bow till you ran out of arrows or the enemy got too close to use a bow, to which you would throw your bow away, or you would throw it at your opponent to distract them, or you could always just run away, or you throw it up along your hip or some shit. But in any case, then you throw your bow away, then you draw the sword, and then you go into melee mode. And historically, this was done. The English longbowmen at the Battle of, I think, Britain, it's like, I know it was of French. I know the French army was decimated by the English longbowmen. But in any case, it is the longbow, the English longbowmen. They were highly proficient in using a bow and arrow. A well-trained English longbowman could draw, load, fire in under 5 seconds. They had nearly a repetition of fire, rapid fire with their bows. And when they ran out of arrows or the enemies got too close, they could always just switch to swords and become infantry. Now, with that in mind, the sword would be cut and thrown. Now, with that in mind, yes, they would switch to a sword. And there's another type of weapon I want to just quickly mention. Throwing weapons, like throwing knives, shurikens, stuff like that. Now, generally, shurikens and throwing knives, they're used for distractions. However, some throwing knives are actually designed to kill somebody when thrown, especially if you aim for the neck. Now, this is where those enhanced reflexes come in. You'd not only be able to fire nearly rapid shurikens or knives, but you'd also be able to throw throwing weapon. You'd also be able to throw the knives while they're charging at you, because you'd be able to do everything you need to. Your brain would be able to process, okay, seeing this guy, see the guy, get the knife, throw it, aim for the neck. They'd be able to your brain would process that 10 times faster than a normal human, and you would be able to throw the knives at the guy faster. So, but in any case, I just wanted to quickly add in the throwing weapons thing. But if I had super speed, and I guess even guns, because you'd be able to eject the empty magazines, pop new ones in, and keep firing. But if I had to go old school with my super speed, definitely a bow and a sword, taking into account that I'm taking advantage of those enhanced reflexes of mine, which will allow me to be more proficient and more deadly. So that was just my thought and opinion. Those were just my thoughts and opinions on Shadiversity's response to video on people with super speed. What weapons would they use? But that's just what I wanted to iterate. So until next time, Outlaw Samurai tells all y'all, be crazy rednecks and be safe when using your weapons.
Goodbye.
I'm out. Peace.